Skins. Skins are a big part of Forsaken, but I've also seen quite a lot of hate on skins. Now, I personally think it's a little bit silly, but there is valid reason behind these complaints, and it does reveal a problem with how Forsaken is designed. So, let's go over it. So why exactly have skins gotten so much flack lately? From what I can observe, there are two main reasons. First, the quality of the skins. A lot of people have very high expectations for skins that the dev teams just sometimes don't meet. I think this started with the Limbus company skins, namely Hacklord. Hacklord was an extremely hyped up skin for a while, a reference to, I believe, Wild Hunt Heathcliff. Don't quote me on this, I've never played Limbus. Considering all the custom stuff Gas Harpoon, another Limbus company reference skin has, people were of course having very high expectations for Hacklord. Now, even before the skin was released, people were already disappointed that Hacklord wasn't going to have any voice lines due to 1x apparently having too many skins with voice lines, despite the fact that 1x had the least skins with voice lines. At the time, he was tied with John Doe for 2 voice line skins, but unlike John Doe, whose voice line skins are all readily available in the shop, one of 1x's voice line skins is an April Fool exclusive. When Hacklord actually released, they completely fumbled the bag. It came out with no custom chase theme, no custom last man standing, and the default Shiletsky kill animation, which made no sense on Hacklord. Even for the custom stuff it had, the custom intro had a Pralium Fatale plastered as a PNG instead of being actually animated for some reason, something that still lasts today. And the initial animations were cool, but some of them were strangely choppy and weird looking, and the M1 animation doesn't even sync up correctly. Now, they did end up adding a custom chase theme, a custom last man standing theme with Heartbroken Shiletsky, and they also ended up using a fan-made animation pack instead, which is what Hacklord uses now. That being said, people were still very disappointed that Hacklord released in an unfinished and half-baked state, which I honestly understand considering the lack of transparency from the developers' end. Like, I'm willing to believe that the developers had good reason to be unable to release Hacklord in a finalized state, but nothing was properly communicated until after the skin was released, which doesn't really help their case. Mind you, these expectations also apply to what comes and does not come to the game. Let's look at Kara 1x as an example. Someone I believe on the dev team made a skin concept for 1x, which is of course based on Kara from Undertale. Characterization wise, this sorta makes sense. Kara was the first fallen child and from everything gathered appears to be a rather morally grey individual. But the only time they make an appearance to the main character, Frisk, and their most iconic appearance, is at the end of the genocide route, as a fully realized version of the player's stats, the embodiment of the player's violent choices. So I suppose the character fits well enough with 1x. I don't know, I'm not too familiar with Undertale, again, don't quote me on this. Either way, the skin was never greenlit due to recognizability issues. This wouldn't be so much of a problem if it didn't coincide with the release of Diva 1x. Unfortunate for Diva 1x because in hindsight, Diva really isn't that bad of a skin. It's based off the Project Diva Deep Blue series, which I'm once again unfamiliar with. Jesus Christ, I'm going to offend 3 fandoms at once, I'm so done. Either way, I think Project Diva Deep Blue is a story where Miku loses most of her popularity, goes insane thinking every other Vocaloid is trying to steal her fame, and proceeds to go unalive all of them. Again, not familiar with the series, don't quote me on this. So character-wise, Diva actually fits 1x pretty well, and other than that face that sorta looks like John Doe, it's pretty identifiable too. The problem is that Kara 1x really is not a concept that is hard to make recognizable to the point where it's outright not greenlit. A few devs have said this on an interview before, but all that really needs to be done is add a domino crown, and maybe the eye glare, something like what they do in Dimensional Coalescence. So rejecting Kara 1x outright just seems like a lack of willingness to work on it more than anything else. With our first issue out of the way, let's get into our second issue. This complaint, at its core, is not really valid, but it does speak to a more relevant problem of Forsaken that I want to talk about more. This complaint is that the skins are getting in the way of development, which is why skins are all they do. I'm sure you already see the problem here. If the game is entirely held up by just a single developer, this would be a valid complaint, as skins would be taking time out of the only developer of the game. However, Forsaken is a team with over a dozen developers and even more contributors. Common sense should tell you that work on skins and development of actual gameplay would probably be split between different people. Even for the super high quality skins that need some coding, not only does it probably not get in the way that much, but chances are the animators know enough about animation scripts that they don't always have to bother the people who develop new characters. If you want to argue that the Forsaken developers have no common sense, go right ahead, but me personally, I don't see them not understanding something this basic. The only argument that could be somewhat valid is that they have the gameplay content done sometimes, but then they wait for the skin batch to be done before they release the content update. I think this is a valid worry, but even then, I don't think it will be a big delay, and I doubt content devs just sit around twiddling their fingers waiting for an update to drop. They're probably still doing something else related to the game. That being said, I think this complaint speaks to a fundamental problem of Forsaken. It's not that skins don't fit the game, it's not that skins are low effort. Look, if you're getting pissy because of cosmetics, then you genuinely have nothing else to complain about. You see what I'm leading up to here? The only real gameplay content in this game are the characters, and there's no tangible gameplay progression once you buy all the characters, which doesn't take that long, I gotta be honest with you. Afterwards, the only, quote, progression, unquote, in the game is cosmetics. And don't try to bring up skill as progression. I know one of you guys are gonna bring it up. That does not count. It should be obvious. I don't have to explain this to you. Even for character milestones, the only, quote-unquote, progression you have are skins! Again, quote-unquote, because they don't really even count as progression. New characters, or full-on character reworks, take a lot of time to release in a good state, compared to skins where most of them are just cool visual concept, make it into a 3D model with little to no programming and absolutely no balance thought required. Obviously, the skins are much easier to make, and this explains why updates feel so saturated with skins. Unless they have a new character kit, which again takes a ton of time, the only things they can add are skins and balance changes. And don't get me wrong, balance changes are nice and all, however they don't add any new gameplay progression and intrigue. They usually get no attention when compared to the shiny new batch of cosmetics, which are the only things in this game to grind for, and the times balance changes do get attention, it's usually vitriol, negativity, and hate. Forsaken needs some kind of content that adds gameplay progression and gives more content that is actually meaningful to interact with beyond just characters. It will take a lot of time to implement, but I believe introducing some kind of system like this would be a very worthwhile investment. The one concept that comes to mind to me is ability variants. You can make these milestone unlocks, you can also make these purchasable in the shop, you can make them both, I don't care. I remember seeing this concept on some YouTube video before, but I don't remember what specific video it is. Someone sent it in the Forsaken Discord server before I went read-only and laughed at them. And while I recall most of their ideas actually being kinda dumb, they suggested milestone abilities, which I believe is based on the strongest battlegrounds. When you unlock milestones, not only do you get a new skin, but you also get new side grade abilities. Now, I emphasize side grades, not upgrades. This is actually a cool concept where you can get new ability variants on milestones. A John Doe variant for corrupt energy that could just be the move being even faster, but only being able to go in one direction. A variant for digital footprint could place a small wall only John Doe can go through. Well, what do you mean that's just artful die of death? Okay, if you couldn't tell yet, I'm not great with concepts, but the point is that it opens up a lot of options. It could be some insane ability that changes the way you can use an ability drastically. Or it could just be a few small tweaks that are enough to give an ability a slightly different use case. Also, players should be able to mix and match these ability variants to come up with something that they like. Let people tweak their abilities and see if they can get something that matches their taste. If someone is really into what a character has to offer, they can experiment with different flavors of that character. Even if someone is not into a character, maybe they would be interested in trying out ability modifications. Maybe they don't like the vanilla kit, but they'll find an alternate kit that they really like. Overall, this concept gives the player something to grind for, and unlike with balance changes and character reworks, the player has the final say in whether they want to use these gimmicky alternative options. Unfortunately, real content progression in Forsaken is just really difficult to make, and ability modifications are the closest I can think of to additional gameplay content to work towards. The thing is, Forsaken is a PvP game, and in PvP-centric games, it isn't very fair or fun for someone to have a significant gameplay advantage over someone else just because they've been playing for longer. Because players are in direct competition against another, fairness and emphasis on skill becomes a much bigger point of contention, which is why balancing is such a heated topic amongst these games. While true fairness is pretty much not possible in any game with more than a single option, especially in an ASIM game where power imbalance is literally in the name of the genre, we still want to make the game as fair as possible, and giving players direct upgrades immediately goes against that fairness we seek to strive so much. This means that you need to be more creative with how you handle progression in PvP games. And personally, the approach I would take is rather than giving the player direct benefits, focus on giving players new experiences instead. Give them gameplay customization that doesn't give an objective advantage, but rather give them the opportunity to try something new. Think of it like ice cream. Vanilla is generally considered the standard flavor of ice cream, and it's a fitting comparison because the term vanilla can also refer to an unmodified part of a game. You can then go on to try chocolate ice cream, strawberry ice cream, mint chocolate chip ice cream, taro ice cream, durian ice cream, charcoal ice cream? None of these flavors are necessarily better than each other or better than vanilla for that matter, but it's giving them the choice, the open selection of flavors that matter the most. Every new ice cream is a new experience. Maybe they'll like it, maybe they won't, but now they know. I feel like this is somehow going in the direction of being a discussion about modern consumer culture. Finally, I want to end it on one little note on skins. I mentioned this in a community post, but in the current state of Forsaken, I feel like they should probably be staying away from collab skins. At least for now, when the devs have a lot of internal stuff to sort out. We don't even know if they can actually kick the former owner out, and even if it turns out they can, the legal system is very slow, and we won't get a resolution until several months in the future at the very least. As of right now, knowing that 25% of the game's revenue is going towards someone who is accused of very heinous actions and has pretty damning evidence to prove it, is enough reason for a lot of potential collaborators to stay away. This is not to mention how people don't associate the fandom with anything good either. The Forsaken community is associated with extreme in-game toxicity. This is especially bad for a game on Roblox, where child safety is tossed around like a buzzword and people freak out as soon as they see women. On top of this, people get harassed over working with Forsaken. Like, you see what I'm saying here, there's a lot of reason to not want to work with Forsaken or have anything to do with it despite its fame. Hopefully the Forsaken team realizes that media that would otherwise collaborate with them and would be great collaborations are just gonna stay away, and hopefully gives them a reason to put more effort into original skins. Right now, although the amount of stuff that goes to reference skins is still quite exaggerated and it isn't exclusively reference skins that get love, it isn't false to say that a good portion of the good juicy stuff is going to the reference or collab skins that can be pulled any minute. I'm fond of the skins themselves and how high quality they are, but again, the main problem is that these can be pulled out any minute, and these are some of the most beloved skins in the community. And I think that's where I will be ending it for now. I hope you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, watch other content, do stuff, and I will be seeing you guys in the next one. Bye-bye!